Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today is the day the NP205 transfer case is going to be put back together. Actually, it's going to be a rebuild because I am doing every bearing on here is getting replaced. It looked like this transfer case had some use on it, so I'm doing every single bearing, all the seals and gaskets and everything. I've got some billet parts from Northwest Fab. I got the twin stick conversion from JB. Well, I just had their name a second ago. JB Custom Fab or something like that. Maybe that's what it is. Anyway, I'll show you what I got as I do it. But yeah, I got all the parts here. I've done some cleanup, some painting. I actually painted the case black. It's actually kind of like a satin black. It's actually just epoxy primer, and then I put a satin clear over it. From what I've gathered, I tried to figure out like what did they do from the factory with these transfer cases, and from what I understand, most of them were just never painted. They just left them cast iron. I believe some of them got painted black, maybe the later years or something like that. They got painted black. This one here, I think I got some pictures. I didn't have to strip any paint off this thing because nobody had done anything to it. I believe they left it the way it was from the factory. This is a truck from out west. The frame barely had any rust on it. This transfer case had a little bit of rust on it. Cleaned it off, painted it, painted a few other parts. This is a slip yoke, NP205, so it's got the aluminum. I painted it black, but it's an aluminum slip yoke for the rear. I am going to keep that. I'm not doing rock crawling or anything like that, so I don't feel like it's going to be a problem for me. I'm going to show you few of the things that I noticed on this thing as I took it apart. First off, there's a magnet in the bottom of it. That thing was just full of metal. I'm not exactly sure from what. That's again why I'm doing every single bearing on here. I believe all the metal might have been from the shift collars. And maybe the shift forks, because I'm replacing all those, and actually I'm replacing the input shaft as well. Okay, so I've got some new parts for this transfer case, not only bearings, gaskets, and seals, but I also picked up a new front input gear. The gear was fine on the old one, but the teeth here, where I call it a shift collar. I think they're calling it in the book a sliding clutch, which is kind of a weird name for it. But the shift collar gear deals were really bad. You can see that this thing really took some abuse. Actually, it looked like the input gear took most of the abuse. So I just decided to replace that. I'm in here hopefully one time and that's it. So I picked that up. Again, these shift collars, I call them shift collars. The book's calling them, the manual is calling them sliding clutches. And the reason I got two brand new ones. They were beat up pretty good, guys. Someone was really jamming this thing into gears. They got one here, but I got two of these. They're both the same. Same with the shift forks. There was a little bit of wear on the pad here, and I just decided to get two new ones. They're not that expensive. And again, they're both the same. There's two of them, and they're both the same. So, and an NP205. So, yeah, they're starting out with no wear on these shift forks. So, yeah, those are pretty much it for the new parts that are going. Everything else looked pretty good. I think I had one gear, I forget where it's at, with a little bit chipped. But yeah, I think it's going to be okay. It's like way on the end. Okay, so I almost forgot. I got new shims too. A bunch of new shims for the idler gear. That's another thing I forgot to mention. This was one of the shims that come out. And you can see it was all kind of jammed in there. There's the other ones right here. You only need to put them on one side, guys. You don't need to like put two on one side, two on the other, one on the one side, one on the other. They only need to be on one end of the idler. I'll show you that when I put it together. But yeah, this was all jammed up in there. Another thing is the idler gear had way too much Endplay in it than what's recommended. The recommended Endplay is 0 to 2 thousandths of an inch. So not much at all, but they do maybe want a little bit of Endplay, but there's a lot of Endplay in here. So I gotta fix that hopefully as I get into this. But that's it for the new parts, guys. I believe I'm ready to start assembling this thing. Okay, so one thing I've noticed on disassembly, and you notice it on a lot of stuff that you disassemble, is someone used way too much sealer when they put this thing back together. Yes, you got to use a little bit of sealer, guys, to help seal everything up, but you do not need to just goop it on like you wouldn't believe. I'm going to show you one reason why you don't do that. This is actually the front output cover for the front output of the to go to the front axle. Okay, so I'm going to flip it over here, and you can see right here there's kind of like a divot right here. Okay, this is a drain back hole for grease. Well, what was in there? Guys, this was in there. I pulled this out of here. Okay, so that ain't exactly how it was. It was stuck in here like so. So you can see, hopefully that's focusing, that this RTV or whatever sealant they used here is completely plugged the drain back hole. But yeah, that's why you don't use all that RTV, guys, and make yourself a mess. Just a little bit of RTV is all you need. Okay, guys, so I'm going to start this rebuild with the idler gear. I've got new bearings for this thing, and new bearings, they come with new races. Well, actually, when you rebuild something, you usually you put new bearings in it. But anyway, I'm going to drive this home here. I did have this race in our freezer for a while. That kind of helps get them installed a little bit. You can hear that thud when you get to the bottom when it's finally seated. If you're going to be doing this kind of stuff, guys, get yourself a decent bearing and race driver set. I'm going to link the ones that I got specifically for this job. We needed some bigger ones. I had a few of them, but I got actually I got a couple sets. But anyway, that's in there. Like I said, I had that in the freezer. That does help a little bit. You could heat this up and put the part in the freezer, and then it really goes easy. But just putting it in the freezer seems to work out. I've already got that one installed on this side. I did that off camera. Okay, so I got my idler gear kind of set up. You can see I got it like clamped to the workbench here, and it's free. It moves on the bearings. I've got everything set up in here. The reason I have this clamped on the bench like this is I'm trying to figure out an end play or a close to end play before I stick it in the case. So I got a dial indicator here, and I've got these shims. Remember I showed you I got a new pack of shims. I used some of the old. I used one of the old ones, and I used another new one. I've been here for a little while, unclamping this, clamping this, and testing it to make sure what kind of end play I've got. And I'm pretty happy with that end play that I have here, which is about 1/1000th of an inch, maybe a little less than that. The spec is 0 to 2/1000ths of an inch end play. And the reason I clamp it down on this table is I'm trying to simulate being bolted into the case. Hopefully that's going to kind of simulate that. I'm going to check the end play once I get it bolted in there, but I want to eliminate having to take it out and redo it. So this is why I'm doing this right now. So yeah, I've got it, like I said, 1/1000th of an inch. I believe they don't want, if you don't use any shims, it's gonna like squish the bearings. There's not going to be any kind of, there won't be any play in those bearings. So I think the idea of having 2/1000ths of an inch is just so they're not being pressed. Or not being, I guess no preload on the bearing. So I'm going to show you here. I got the bearing. I've got 2 shims. One of the shims was already in there. This is the shim that I added to get what I wanted. And then there's the spacer. This is the original spacer that was in there already. And then on the bottom there, I've got the other bearing in there. So that's how this is going to go in there. Your spacer, your shims, and then your bearings. So, and you can see this thing spins good. I don't want to spin it much because these bearings are dry. I'm actually going to use some lube on them before I put them inside the transfer case because I don't want them dry. Okay, so also those shims, they only go on one side. You don't need to put equal amounts on each side of that spacer. According to the manual, you only need to put the shims on one side. It does the same job no matter what side you put the shims on. You just need shims in there. I do have a tool. This is a Kentmore tool, J23429, and this is actually a tool to assemble a transfer case, especially this idler gear. And what this tool does is all it does is it goes down in here, and then it's actually going to help you keep this whole assembly together while you install it. And then when you slide your shaft, when you put your shaft in, it helps keep everything aligned. It's just a lot easier. It's just a lot easier with this tool. You don't need this tool. I'm glad I have it. I did a quick search on eBay, found one, and picked it up just for this job. Okay, so before I put the idler gear in there, I'm going to put this magnet back in the transfer case. Now, this must be a later year deal because I've not seen anybody put a magnet in their transfer case on any videos. There's actually like little castings there that kind of hold it there, and then there's also this little bracket that goes in, and it kind of grabs. Again, there's another casting there. It grabs it and kind of locks this magnet down. You gotta push on it pretty good. So along with being in kind of a little groove here, you got this clip that locks onto the casting and doesn't allow this magnet to go anywhere. It shouldn't go anywhere. Probably, I'm just going to take a picture of it because it's easier to take a picture than show you on camera. Okay, so I got my gear assembly, and I've got it. I put some Lucas assembly lube on it. I've got my tool installed to help me get this thing in here. This is still not going to be a very fun install. The bigger gear goes towards the front of the transfer case. Okay, so the air compressor was on. I probably had to mess with the audio there, but I got my idler shaft all cleaned up, and I'm pushing it through, and you can see as I push it through, the tool that I installed is coming through at the same time. So what it's doing is it's keeping all my shims in line. It's keeping the bearings in line. It's keeping everything in line where it's supposed to be while I install this shaft. So I'm having to tap this in. Okay, so I had to get a little more aggressive. I got a block of wood and got this a little further through, but it looks like I'm going to have to get my impact and pull this and pull that through, I guess. So that is pulling it through. Okay, so that's pulled it through. There is a torque spec on that, I believe. Okay, so this idler shaft lock nut is what they're calling it. It says 200 foot-pounds. I am not sure how I'm going to be able to do that. I might just hammer it down with my big old impact here and then call it good, I think, is what I'm going to do. I've seen that impact snap bolt, so I don't think that's going to come loose. So I got the idler gear installed. I got the bolt tightened down. I don't know the exact torque, but it's pretty tight. I'm going to take I got a little pry bar here. I've got my dial indicator installed, and I'm just going to hold the gear so it don't spin. I'm going to take my little pry bar thing here and just kind of give it a pry. And I still have that 1/1000th of an inch, maybe a little less. I think if I pry harder, I could probably get a little more. So I still got that 1/1000th of an inch Endplay. So that's right in the middle of the specs that they call for. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to move on. So the next thing you would do if you were going to do a normal install is you're going to put this cap over the idler shaft hole. You're going to notice on this cap there's a flat end on it. You see this flat end right here. So that flat end actually goes like this. So the PTO cover is over here. So basically it's facing the opposite way of that PTO cover. I watched a video and the guy had it turned that way. I don't know why you would turn it that way. The manual is telling me to go this way. So like I said, I normally you'd put that on, bolt them down. I believe them are 18 foot-pounds, those 3 little bolts. I got some nice billet covers and I don't really want to put it on right now while I'm fiddling around with everything. So I'm going to wait to install that cover. So now you're going to install the interlock shafts. There's actually 2 of these. I'm going to show you. I'm going to grab the camera and show you. I'm going to put them halfway in and I'll show you the install of them. But basically what these do, these actually keep you from shifting, or keep you from being able to shift the front in like low range and the rear in high range or whatever. It'd be pretty catastrophic, I think, if you did that. But that's basically what these do. They got a little round tips on them. And like I said, I'm going to show you where they go. Okay, so this is where those interlock shafts go. Right here and right down there. Hopefully you can see that. And they actually go all the way through. You got to push them all the way through. I got a little bit of assembly lube on them, and they got to go. Hopefully you can see that there. See the shaft right there? I should have probably had some light. But they got to go between these two shift rail holes. See, these are the shift rail holes. So these shafts are going to sit between both of them. So you got to push them in so you'll barely be able to see them poking through the hole on the shifter shafts. So now, I actually already installed these, but the shift rail seals, you want to install them. I actually, like I said, I bought a seal driver set, a small set that had the perfect size. I'll link them, guys, because having the right tools and the right size of stuff just really helps. When you're doing something, the right tools make all the difference. Anyway, now I'm ready for the shift rail here. This is the front drive shift rail, and you're going to notice this part is really shiny because this is actually a JB custom fab. This is a stainless CNC machined shift rail specifically for their twin stick conversions. Yes, you can use your old shift rails and like grind them and whatever and make them work, but I kind of figure I'm kind of going all out on this, so you know, why not? Let's get some fancy, might as well use the fancy stuff. Just using a little bit of assembly lube as I'm installing this stuff. You're going to have detents right there. Them actually line up with the little ball and spring that's going to go in this hole right here. So you're going to slide that into the hole there. See, I think it wants it in the neutral position. But actually, I have to grab my fork, my shift fork, because you gotta put that on as you're sliding that in there. So let me go grab that. Okay, so here's my new shift fork, and like I said, it's brand new. It's a replacement. My other ones were just a little bit wore, so like I said, I figured. Let's replace them. Now, the forks go in there. The roll pin side actually goes towards the front of the transfer case. Going to be pretty difficult to show you. Pretty difficult to show you. Go inside there and show you this shift fork going in the shift rail. It's pretty well impossible. But anyway, I got it in the, see, they want it in the neutral position, so it's going to be that second, it's going to be the middle detent on there. It should be. Okay, so next it's telling me to install my front input bearing and shaft. So again, Just putting a little bit of assembly lube on that bearing. We're gonna set it in place here. There's a snap ring. Here's a snap ring. I had to rob the snap ring from my old bearing, which is really weird. I thought they would have sent me a new snap ring with the rebuild kit, but they didn't. So there's the snap ring on there. And I'm going to take a little punch here. Just tapping on the outside. This is a brass punch. I'm barely tapping that, guys. You wouldn't want to hit the inside of that bearing. You can feel it when it's bottomed out there. I like hearing them bearings get some grease. I don't know why. I hate installing dry bearings. It just, I don't know, it scares me, I guess. So then I'm going to take my brand new input shaft that I bought. I'm going to slide that in from the back. I'm going to slide that into the slide this into the bearing, and I believe I heard a noise back there. It's the shift rail hitting. I was metal to metal. I didn't understand what that noise was, but the shift fork is sitting on the gear back there as I'm turning that. But I believe there's a snap ring that goes on there. Okay, so on the front of the shaft there is a snap ring, like so, that goes on here. Okay, so that locks that shaft onto the bearing there. And then you got an O-ring here. I think I might put some Vaseline on there. I got some Vaseline for this job too, to pack some bearings. So probably going to put a little Vaseline on this before I install that. There's a groove right here on the shaft that O-ring slides onto. Okay, so now we're going to put the shift range, shift rail into position. I've got the transfer case spun around. Basically, this is the shorter shift rail. This is, again, my transfer case. It might be different if you got a different transfer case, but I'm just going to put this in the other hole. This is going in the other. We already got the other front shift range shaft in there. Got a new fork. This time you got to put the collar. They call it a sliding clutch. I call it a shift collar, whatever you want to call it. Remember, the roll pin deal, it's the longer side of the shaft goes towards the front of the transfer case. So that's got to go in here like so. And I believe you got to put this stuff together because you can't get it in there. You can't get it. You can't get this collar on there like the other one. It's got to be put in there together. So if I can find. So I'm putting it on the gear there. I'm getting my shifter. And I got to put this shaft through my shift fork. Which is easier said than done. There we go. Now remember your detents. I know you can't see them, but remember the detents? They go upwards. And to see here, we're going to put, I don't know if they want this one in neutral too, but we're going to line up the middle detent with this hole right here. I'm going to try to get my sliding clutch to engage that gear. Seems to be okay. So now they got all the shift. We got the shift forks. And the shift shafts installed. Now we got to install the roll pins in them, and this can be a little tricky. I actually went and bought some roll pin punches just for this job. But there's this one here, don't look to be too tricky. This other side, it's pretty deep inside there. So we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to try to take a piece of tape. Try to tape that roll pin. To my punch. And now I've got it all lined up, so Seems to be like we're stuck on something there. Oh, that's a hard drive and roll pin right there. So you want that just flush. You want the roll pin just flush with it there. And it should be locked together. Now I'm going to do the other one. That's the hard one. I'm going to do that off camera. You get the idea. I'm going to do the same thing. Piece of tape, pound it in, look for the hole, hope and pray. And I'll be back, guys. Okay, so once I got all this installed, I was kind of playing around with everything. And when I put the shift rail all the way forward on this input shaft, I noticed something. The gear is actually hitting the new shift fork. So what I did was I made a quick call to Off-Road Design, and I guess the manufacturer has decided to make the shift forks a little thicker than they were from the factory. So I gotta pull that shift rail back out. I gotta compare it to the old one, and maybe I'll show you a picture or something of it. And we gotta grind down the new shift rail to get it to work. Ain't that something? We got to take a brand new part and we've got to modify it to work. Sound about right? Yeah, that's the way it goes, guys. You know, I guess you can sit here and cry about it, or you can get to fixing it, I guess, or get out of the restoration business, I guess, because this is the way it's going to be. So I got to getting this fork back out, and we'll see if we can't fix the problem here. Okay, so I got the new shift fork out, and I actually got some pictures. You can see on here they got like extra webbing than the original one had. Of course, it looks like they got less webbing going down here. It's actually thicker on the original one there, so this one actually might be a little stronger than this replacement. But you can see, well, I don't know if you can see or not, but you can see where the gear was hitting right here. There's not a whole lot that needs to be ground off that, but it's enough. It would have caused a problem if I wouldn't have tested it. I would just use my original ones. I would like to use them, but I don't know if you can see the wear on there. It's just, there's a lot of wear on there, and I just don't want to use that. I want a nice shift and transfer case when I'm all done here. You can find used ones on eBay. I was worried that someone was taking a picture of the best one they had and then selling junk ones. So I just decided to go new. I guess it ain't too bad. I gotta modify this, but I'm having to do some rework. It's slowing me down, and I don't know about the other one, if the other one's gonna have a problem or not. In there, if it's gonna get into any gears. I think we're gonna be okay, because I don't think, well, I was gonna say there ain't no big gears, but there is some big gears there. Okay, so I guess while I'm having to do this rework, I might as well show you exactly what you're doing with that roll pin and this shift fork. So this is the shift rail I just pulled out, and it's got a hole You can see there's a hole right here, and that is for the hole here on the shift rail. And the shift rail, or the shift fork, goes on the shift rail like that, and you line the holes up, and that's where your roll pin gets pounded into that hole there, and it locks the shift fork onto the shift rail. So that's what you're doing when I'm pounding them roll pins through those little holes. That's what I'm doing, is you're connecting the shift fork to the shift rail there. Okay, so I've got, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not. I got this ground down. Hopefully should be enough. But I'm going to give you a few more tips on installing these shift rails. You can actually start your roll pin onto the shift fork before you stick it in there. That's going to help you. It's going to help you not have to try to fish it in there and find the hole. Second little tip I got is take a light. Get yourself a light, stick it inside the transfer case, and what that's going to do is going to light everything up, and it allows you to find the holes in the shift rails a lot easier. So I'm going to get this thing back installed, and hopefully we're going to continue on with the assembly of this. Okay guys, so I've got my shift fork situation figured out, ground down, and I believe I got everything clearing. I don't think we're going to have any trouble with the other shift rail because I believe there's enough room for it to be wider, but I'll let you know if it doesn't work out. Next, we're going to the front output shaft. You can see I've got it all tore apart. We got the big gear. This is the gear that goes on the front of the shaft. This gear goes on the back of the shaft. We got big old snap ring. This is the shaft itself. It's got 2 rows of roller bearings we got to install. It's got a thrust washer that goes behind the bearing. This washer goes between the 2 rows of needle bearings. This is one of the retainers for all the needle bearings. And then oh yeah, right, there's a little pin. You can see that right there. That goes in the hole right there, and that goes I believe it goes on this washer here and holds this washer from moving, I guess. So I'm going to set this all up. We're going to start installing the needle bearings and try to get this shaft installed. Okay, so this should be pretty simple, just kind of a tedious job. I'm going to actually use my slip yoke housing that's going on the back of this transmission. I'm going to put my shaft down in here, and I'm just going to use that to kind of hold this up while I put all the needle bearings in there. These are the old needle bearings. I got a whole pile of them, but like I said, I'm going to be installing all these new ones. I believe they said there's 32 in each row. There's 2 rows, so there's a lot of them. I'm probably not going to video this whole thing. I'll stop it. But I've got some Vaseline here that I'm going to stick on here, and hopefully these bearings will stick to the Vaseline here like so. Like I said, not really hard. Just kind of a tedious job here. Putting all these roller bearings all the way around here. So there's really no up or down on these. Should be just pretty straightforward, just sticking them in there. A lot of guys I see skip this step. They don't put these bearings in here, but I think for to have a true rebuilt transfer case, you really need to go and change all these bearings. You know, they've used the same fluid, you know, everything else in the transfer case is used. So you're going to, you know, if the fluid was all dirty with damaged parts or something like that, you know, these roller bearings were run through it too. So I got the first row in there. Looks to be like they're a little loose, but I don't think I can get another one in there. I probably should count them to make sure there's 32 there. Yep, did a quick count. There's 32. There is a little bit of space between them. So okay, so I got my first row of roller bearings on there, and you got to remember there's a little washer that goes on there. I'm just throwing some Vaseline over that. So that goes on over top of your first row of needle bearings. I'm going to see if I can't get this second row on there before I install the gear. I thought maybe I was going to install the gear first. But they seem to be sticking pretty good. So I think I'm going to throw all these on there quick. So my bag has a whole bunch of more needle bearings left over. And that is because the rear output shaft has needle bearings in it. We're going to have to do that too. So we'll do one at a time here. That looks good. I like that. I got Vaseline all over my fingers. So then there, you got to remember this little bitty little deal goes in there, goes in the hole there. And then this washer, I guess you can see where the bearings have been, you can see where the bearings have been moving on it. Set that on there. And that little deal keeps this washer from moving. Must have something to do with the bearings moving or whatever. And then you've got this snap ring here, which is fun to get on. It's a stout, very stout snap ring. That snap ring is something else. I gotta wonder if person needs like a bigger. I think they want that opening of the snap ring opposite of that pin. But that's pretty much it. Now this thing is actually ready to go back in the case. Okay, so we got a new bearing here for the front output. It's going to slide in there. That thing slides really easily in there. We got our snap ring. Again, this is the old snap ring because the kit apparently didn't come with new snap rings for these for some reason, but I assumed it did, but I guess you're not supposed to assume anything, right? Anyway, I think it's a snap ring. They're not, I don't think they're damaged. They probably, I don't know if they've been messed with in their lifetime or not, but so now we got to put this thrust washer that goes against the bearing. Then we've got this gear. It's got to go onto the shaft here that we just put together. The shaft that we just put together. It's got to go in this gear, and I got to put the new shift collar has got to go on the fork there. So we got a lot that's got to go on right now. Right here. And I am not sure. This gear's got to go in first. This washer's got to go in. I don't know if I could put that whole assembly in as one or not. Again, I'm lubing this stuff up. just so it's not starting off dry. Oh shoot, I already screwed up. That shift collar's got to go on first. Shift collar, got to go on here. Gear, got to go on here. And this thrust washer has got to go on there. And I don't think that I can put all this in there together. Okay, so I have to say that was one of the more difficult things that I've done on this rebuild, is get this all to line up and slide in. I actually had to get a couple 2x4s and prop this thing on its face so it wasn't putting any pressure on the shift rails, because if I flipped it over and I was putting pressure on the shift rails, I couldn't get everything to line up, so I had to flip it up. And like I said, that was probably one of the more difficult things I've done here, but I've got it on there and got the front bearing in place, so I'm actually ready to install these awesome Northwest Fab covers here, billet covers. I got a video on that if you want to go check that out on my channel. So the cover goes on next. The only problem is, well, if you got to put a new bearing in there on your cover, or put your roller bearings in there, that's what you got to do. But this cover came with a new bearing already ready to go. I just put some assembly lube in there so it ain't dry. And then you are lining up this bearing with that shaft. So you get it on the shaft there, and then you're going to probably have to raise it up a little bit to get it to go up on the into the ridge there. Now, I'm not doing this for good yet, because the bolts that came with these covers, I don't think they are stainless. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get me some stainless bolts, and then I'm going to use RTV on the gasket, just a little bit, not a ton of it. And then you got to remember that a lot of these bolts go through the case. Okay, so you're going to have to RTV your bolts as well as you put them in here. My gasket is in the way of my bolts there. I'm just kind of mocking this up. Without that gasket, they went on a lot easier. I got that gasket ain't quite straight. Anyway, you get the point there. I gotta get the bolts, and then I grabbed this cover too. This is again a Northwest Fab. I got a kit, all billet aluminum stuff. And actually I got stainless bolts for this because I thought that I was gonna use the original cover. So I got stainless bolts for that. And again, I got my the flat end is right here up against this cover. And again, I would use sealer on that on my final assembly. I'm just putting this stuff in place for now. just to, I guess, see what I need. So make sure all these bolts are going to work out. I actually had to tweak, or I actually had to massage two of these bolts. These two. I had to go in and kind of massage them because they weren't quite lined up and they're trying to cross thread the bolt on me. Okay, so next up is the cover for the front output. Again, I got Northwest Fab, this sick looking billet cover. And also you got a gasket, and you also have to line up, guys. There's a drain back hole. You can see there's a notch right here. There's a drain back hole. Remember, make sure your gasket lines up, and also make sure when you bolt this on that drain back hole lines up with the drain back hole on the case right there. So again, I'm not going to put gasket sealer on my gasket because this is not my final, this is not going to be the final assembly on this. This is just checking to see what I need. Again, I want to get some stainless, I believe some stainless Allen head bolts. We're putting her on here, kind of mock up, I guess. Now this is the, if you remember beginning of the video, this was that was the drain back hole that was full of sealant. So that's not good. So then next thing you're going to do is you're going to install your front yoke. So if you remember a few videos back, I installed a ready sleeve or a speedy sleeve on this yoke because it had some grooves in it. Going to put a little bit of assembly lube on that. Again, I just want to kind of see all this kind of go together here. Okay, so I may probably going to have to tap that seal down a little ways. I can't tell if that's hitting it or not, but I think I'm gonna have to tap that seal on that billet cover down a little bit. But then you got your washer and your lock nut, guys. That'll go on there. Okay, guys, so I've got the output, the rear output housing here. I've got a brand new bearing that came in the rebuild kit. I'm going to be installing it down in the hole, and got my little bearing driver. I actually had that thing, the bearing has been in the freezer, so it should help it go in a little bit. You probably ain't going to be able to see anything, but So there it is. And these rollers are trapped in there. They can't come out like the original ones. I'm going to I'll put some assembly lube in there before I install it, but this one is ready to go. Okay guys, so I'm not sure how much of this I'm actually going to show, but this is the rear output shaft, and you can see mine's really long because I have a slip yoke on mine, along with you got the big long tail, aluminum tail shaft deal. So it's a little different than anything I've seen in videos, but there are needle bearings that go inside here. So they go in around there. Then you have a washer that goes on top of the needle bearings, and then there's this little snap ring that holds all those in place. So probably gonna take some Vaseline. I'll pack them in there so they stay, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do that first or I'm going to do the needle bearings outside here. So I'm going to kind of give you a demonstration of what's going on here. There's a tanged, they call it a tanged washer. Now this is the original one. You can see it is all tore up. There's a supposed to be like that, and it's all tore up. So luckily the kit came with a new one. So you lay that down, and you gotta line. There's that tang. That tang goes with this notch here. So then you're gonna do a set of roller bearings. Okay, so I got first row of needle bearings, roller bearings, I guess whatever you want to call them. Then you take your washer, install that on there. Then there's going to be a second row of needle bearings. Okay, got my second row of needle bearings on there. So now I'm going to throw the gear onto the needle bearings. That's why you got needle bearings there, because there's a gear here that's gonna. So the gear has a place for the shift collar or sliding clutches, like the manual likes to call them, are down because it's gonna slide over all these teeth. So carefully slide that down. Should be good to go. Okay, so you got another tanged thrush washer. Again, this one ain't too bad, but it's about cracked, the old one. So good thing they sent the new one. I believe this one's got to go. That tang goes up, and it goes up because it's going to meet the groove. See this slot here? That tang is going to go in there, but you got to remember this little bitty little, remember this little thing like we did before, this little thing? It's got to go, there's a little hole. See, there's a little hole there? It's got to go inside that hole there. And then see, there's a little notch here. I can show it in the camera. There's a notch there. That goes over the deal. You gotta turn it around here. That goes over the deal. And the little tang, you got to move the tang so it catches the washer. Like so, it kind of locks everything in. Now we've got the snap ring. Heavy duty snap rings got to go on here. I'm not going to show that because I'm probably going to struggle like heck to get that on. But I don't think my kit came with a new one, but okay, so here is the output shaft. And I just put the needle bearings, roller bearings inside there, and yeah, I'm not going to be able to get a very good shot of that. So I'll try to get a picture. I tried to get a picture. I can't get a very good picture either. But anyway, they go down in there. You got the washer, then the clip I showed you. It's the needle bearings used. These are the small ones that we used on the big gear. But the ones that go down in there are the bigger ones. So these are the old ones. I put new ones in there so you can see the difference. They actually use 2 rows of the little ones, but they got 1 row down in the gear there. So I got to flip my case over, get it propped up, and then I'm going to drop my shaft down in there. Okay, I got my transfer case kind of tipped forward, and this is exactly what I did, or exactly what I had to do to put the front output in. I had to put it on I had to tip it up sideways and then drop it in, otherwise it would not go in. But anyway, I got my shaft here, and I'm going to slide that down in here. Should go relatively easy. So I've got my gasket on there. Okay, so I'm going to put my rear housing on. I have lubed up the bearings in there. I'm going to drop it on here carefully. Got my RTV on there with the gasket. Got it in place. Don't forget the Speedo gear that goes on there. I believe it can go either way. Trying to look for a mark. Then we've got the bearing here. And that might be a little bit of a struggle to get that on there. Well, that took a little persuasion. but I think we're good to go. So I'm going to flip this back upright. I gotta get my snap ring. You gotta pull your shaft out so you can get that snap ring back in place. Hopefully I'm getting all this. I can't really see my camera right now, but okay, so I got the piece that goes on this rear output assembly. It's for a slip yoke. If you don't have a slip yoke, you'll have just a regular yoke coming out of here. You won't even have this part. But this goes on, and it only goes on one way. Really, the bolts only line up one way, so you got to make sure you got it in the right spot. Got some stainless bolts. I've already got a gasket along with RTV, a little bit of RTV on it to help prevent leaks. I am going to put a little bit of RTV on the threads of one bolt here. The rest of these bolts are blind holes, but this one right here by the Speedo assembly looks like it's not a blind hole. So I'm going to put a little bit of RTV in that hole, that bolt. But the other one should be going into, like I said, blind holes. Once I get all my bolts installed here, I'm going to torque these down to, I'm going to go with 30 foot-pounds because that's what everything else looks like. It's that 30 foot-pounds looks like a pretty universal deal for all these. If you didn't have the slip yoke and you had the regular yoke, it'd be 30 foot-pounds too. So I'm guessing it's going to be the same for this one. Okay guys, so I'll give you a quick rundown here. What's going on? I'm waiting on bolts. So I got the speedometer gear assembly. That just slides in like so. There's a housing, I guess. Speedometer housing is what you call that. That goes in there. I haven't figured out what kind of gasket that takes. I believe I got an O-ring on there, but it's way too thick. That thick O-ring isn't going to do it. Maybe a thinner O-ring would work on that. But yeah, that's not going to... I'm just kind of doing this to mock up to get everything out of the way, show you guys what's going on. Over here, you're going to notice I got a brass nipple on here instead of the factory had a, I don't know where it's at, but there's a little thing. It was kind of pressed in. I just popped it out, and then I tapped the hole. 1/8 inch NPT, I believe, is what that is. And like I said, I got a brass nipple on there. I'll have a hose. I'll run it somewhere. So water can't get, that's the breather. That's the factory breather, so water can't get in there. I don't know if I mentioned it, but the bolts that hold this rear housing, 30 foot-pounds for them. The bolts that are going to go on the rear cover for the front output, them are 30 foot-pounds. The bolts for the idler shaft cover, those are 18 foot-pounds. The bolts that hold this front output, it's the bearing retainer. That number 30 foot-pounds. The big lock nut, I think I mentioned that, 200 foot-pounds on that. The big idler nut, they say 200 foot-pounds on that. You can see I've got these little rubber things on here. Now this is what came on my transfer case. It's the little rubber plugs, and that's where, these are the holes that I pounded the roll pins into the shift rails with. So mine came with little rubber plugs. I believe my rebuild kit came with little steel plugs that you pound in there. I think I'm probably just going to go with my rubber ones. I'll probably lube them up, pound them in there. They're pretty tight. I've got the, right here, this hole right here is, it holds the detents. So right here, this one is just a bolt, and it's got it's kind of hollow. It holds, there's a ball, a little ball. You see that little ball? Down here it'll stay. There's a ball, and then you've got a spring. And you drop the ball in that hole, then you drop the spring in the hole, and then you tighten down that, and that's what gives you that detent. You know, where you shift it up all the way. I believe that's low. Then you shift it back one, that's neutral, back another one, that's high. Same with the front shift rail. Only this one here, you can see I got a little different deal on here. This is actually a four-wheel drive switch. So I believe the dash has a switch. This has got a little deal on it that gets pushed, I believe. I'm not sure how it stays. Once it falls into the next notch, I don't know how it stays being pushed. But anyway, it's got another ball will go in there, and then another spring. So ball, spring goes down in that hole. Then this switch goes in. Now this switch, I tested it. It's still working. I have been looking for a replacement. They have discontinued the part number on there. There was, I think, another part that replaced it, but I cannot find anything. I may have to just run that. I don't really want to. But let's see here. Oh, I got stainless drain plugs here. You can see, well, actually, this is a fill plug. The drain plug is down here. Again, stainless. I believe them are 30 foot-pounds torque on those as well. And, oh, almost forgot the cover. I'll get a better shot when I'm all done with this, guys. But the cover there, you can see I do have some button head stainless steel bolts that I think look really good on there. Those are 15 foot-pounds for them bolts, which is kind of odd because they're the same size as the other ones. You'd think it'd be like 30. But my book is telling me 15 for some reason. So, yeah, I believe, oh, another thing with this transfer case is there's two holes on the side here. I am not exactly sure what they're for, but they came with those same plugs that are up here. These rubber plugs, they came with them. So, yeah, I'm probably just going to put them back in there. Again, that's probably a later model thing. If you got an older NP205, you're going to have a plug. It's like a steel, I don't know what it is, it's like a little steel plug that goes in there. And you'll just pound it in with some sealer. You just pound it into the hole there. But yeah, I don't have any clue why there's a hole on the side of this case like that. I really don't know. But that's where I'm at. I'll be back once my bolts show up. Probably gonna have this thing all back together. I don't need to show you putting RTV. Just don't goop the RTV on so bad that it's just gushing out of the cover. When you put the RTV on, it should just, like here, it should just be squeezing out. You know, just squeezing out of the deal is all you need. If it's like squished out and there's a big old glob of it, you're using way too much. But yeah, guys, it's looking awesome. I know I've been touching it with my greasy hands and everything. It's getting kind of greasy, but I'll probably wipe it off once I get it installed. But I'll be back, guys, when I get my bolts. Okay, so another thing I picked up for this transfer case was a stud mounting kit. So what this is you get 8 studs that you put on where the input shaft or where the transfer case bolts on to the transfer case adapter on the transmission. There's 8 mounting. Usually you would put bolts in there, but I think if I use this stud kit, it's going to be a lot easier to just kind of slide it on, and then you put apparently you put a washer, and then they got these lock nuts. So I'm going to install these. It's not too bad. On the 70 I had trouble with these top bolts up here. Well, I guess with the body on. The body ain't on right now, but eventually the body will be on the truck. So I guess maybe it'll help me out if I gotta ever take it off. Hopefully I ain't ever gotta take it off, but yeah, I struggled a little bit on the 70 to get a few of those bolts started. So this should make it a lot easier, stud kit. Okay, so how do you install said stud kit? Well, you got to remember these bolts go into the case. They go all the way through. I think most of them do. So I got RTV on my threads. I'm going to start them in there. Well, see, now this one's going all the way down. Most of the time they won't do that. So you take a nut, actually take 2 nuts, you put them together, and then you jam those nuts together, and then you can use a wrench to install those studs. But you know, that one, like I said, that one went real easy, but most of them did not go in that easy. Then you unlock or unjam your nuts, pull it off. I like to clean up my RTV. When I'm done with it, just to give it a nice, so it ain't got a mess in there. And I would take that RTV and I would put it on my my next stud, but I'm out of studs, so that's how I'm installing the stud kit. So I just made a couple gaskets quick for these detent ball bolts, and this is just gasket material that we have. My dad will make gaskets for old tractors that we can't get gaskets for anymore. So I just made that little kind of like a washer gasket type thing to be able to go on these. Like I said, the spring and detent spring and ball for the detent. Got another one for this switch. So yeah, I just made those quick. I didn't know what to do for a gasket there. I'm not sure there's going to be a ton of fluid coming out of there. It's the shift rail, so I don't know how much fluid there's going to be there. I don't remember actually when I took it apart. I don't remember if there was a gasket under there or not, but I didn't want something so thick that would mess up the spring and ball thing. So I think this is a good compromise, and it should keep anything from leaking out of there. Okay, so one final thing on this transfer case is this Northwest Fab billet cover. It's aluminum. It's just looks like it's anodized or something, something black. But yeah, it's gonna go. Just gonna install it. I got RTV and a gasket. Up here, so just gonna put these bolts in again. I just put that bolt in without any RTV, but most of these bolts, these holes, are going in through the case. So a little bit of RTV is going to help keep everything from leaking. So there it is, guys, all finished up. Completely rebuilt NP205. Pretty happy with the way this thing come out. So what you're looking at here, with everything, the billet covers, rebuild kit, all the bearings. I got a JB custom fab, twin stick conversion. I've really only showed you the stainless shift rails, but I got the whole kit. I'm going to do that when I install it. I'll show you how that works. But with all new parts that I've got, I got about $1,500 in this transfer case, so not a cheap deal at all. Probably have another $300-400 in tools that I bought to complete this job. So you don't really need a whole lot of tools. You're going to need some heavy-duty snap ring pliers to do some of those snap rings. Other than that, you got to measure the Endplay of that idler shaft. I mean, I guess you don't have to, but I would highly recommend you measure that and get that within spec. And then I did use that dummy shaft for the idler gear to get everything lined up. Again, you don't really need that. Made life a whole lot easier. But these are pretty simple transfer cases to deal with. It took me a while to do this. I actually did it nice and slow. And waiting on, it seemed like I was waiting on a lot of parts. Every time I would look at something, I'd have to order something anyway, and it kind of dragged on. But yeah, this video has probably gotten really long. It's probably well over an hour. So I'm going to end the video here. I'll do an install, me putting this thing in the truck, do an install video on that. And yeah, it's rebuilt and I'm happy. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Maybe you learned something. I'll see you guys.